had a Spanish teacher named Mateo Bud, Mr. Bud.
Do you have to really pronounce it?
Who he would always say
consonants.
Bolsa.
All right, okay. But would he always say Mateo in a certain way as well?
Mateo Bud.
Well, it's
I'm working on my plosives so that you can
New York.
you can catch my plosives and my fricatives.
Hey,
And then neuters, unlike Dante.
there's a whole bunch of fun words that we could that work out very well.
I didn't do his level, so I'm trying to mess him up as much as.
Oh, good.
Appreciate that. I am recording though. We are.
Sorry, Dave. How does your have you actually said anything yet?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, and that all works.
Yeah.
It works. Dave says good.
Yeah, I always sing great.
Yeah.
You always sound good. I mean, agreed. That's fine.
I'm just tempted to start doing voices. We're gonna do the whole episode.
No, we're not.
No,
we're not.
Kermit interviewing you.
No.
Yes, yeah. It was kind of Kermit.
What's your favorite color?
Black.
Oh, how does Kermit deal with goths?
Kermit's open to anyone, right? But there are green shades of black.
There are green shades of black, yeah.
Surely there's black shades of green.
Black has green. I don't know. That's all I got.
That's it. Hey,
I used to be able to do Fozzie, but now it just sounds like Gonzo on meth.
That is.
Waka waka waka.
That is.
yeah,
You
no,
know?
that's
sounds
pretty
like,
intense.
Yeah.
To be honest,
Waka waka.
it's the
like
perfect
higher.
serial killer voice. I imagine you chasing someone down the street with a
Do
knife.
Gollum. We can do it in Gollum. When Smeagol.
You said that as if this is a real. But we can do this. We can. No, definitely. We can do this in Gollum. You're okay with Gollum? It's okay. Let's do it with Gollum.
I'm okay with Gollum, but I will not be doing Gollum.
I think that's fair. That was.
Taters?
no.
What's taters?
What has happened to you today?
Potatoes.
Smeagol.
What is in that cup exactly?
The ice.
Anyway,
Did you say lice?
the
Ice.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Frozen water.
anyway.
Board games. Welcome to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I am Dougal.
And I'm Gelb.
And we're joined today by the amazing Dave Wright, otherwise known as Dave Tabletop Scotland.
Or Dave Never Wrong.
Dave, yes. Or Dave, that's one. That's one already.
That's my father's reference.
Yeah. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming to join
No
us
problem
today.
at all. It's a pleasure to be here.
You do run, or at least one of the major leaders of Tabletop Scotland, which is a Scottish board game convention.
It's my fault that it exists.
It is entirely your fault, and people are consistently blaming you.
They are.
I personally want to know what your kind of like board game journey, I guess, has been, or gaming journey to lead you to the point where you sacrifice all of your spare hours of the day completely for free to build up this huge community of gamers.
1984, Redbox D&D lands in the UK. My brother Alan buys it or gets given it for his birthday. I nag my mum to let me play it with him and his friends, which my mum forces him to do. We then play lots of basic D&D, Golden Heroes, basically GW's line of distribution back then, as well as their own games. And him and his friends gave up. I didn't. It's kind of gone from there. Predominantly role-playing games until 20-ish, probably longer than that, 25 years ago when I started to dabble in card games, Magic, and board games. And then about 17 years ago, I opened a game store, which then closed about 2.5 years later. I lost my hobby for a year because everything was a product rather than a game. And then 5th edition, D&D Next, 4th edition was kind of in its downward spiral, and D&D Next was coming along. Both that and Battletech was what got me back into the hobby. And ever since then, it's been kind of a lot of board games, but I am a role player first. It is my favourite aspect of the hobby, but I do enjoy board games, simply prefer just putting it down on the table and playing, rather than having to do as much prep as you do for role-playing games.
Yes, which is a huge amount. There is a massive gap between enjoying role-playing games and board games and
Yeah.
running a huge convention.
Yeah. So
What kind of drove it down that? Yeah, what went wrong?
in 2014, my darling wife agreed for me to go to Gen Con for a slightly belated 40th birthday present. And my mate Greg and Liz went with me, which is when 5e came out. I was blown away by the festival experience that Gen Con has, because whilst it is a convention, has a large trade hall, it is very much a festival of the hobby. I then went to Expo in 2015. My mate Greg, and there's a common theme here about a lot of things, got me very drunk in the Hilton Bar at the Expo, and I was ranting about the lack of anything in Scotland. And Greg knows which buttons to push, and therefore I said, okay, I'll fix it. It then took me 2 years to find a venue that ticked all the boxes. It needed something that had the right logistics of how people get there. It needed space we could grow into. I didn't want to move it year after year, etc. And it needed to have a cost model that would work. All the usual things that you think about if you've got a business hat on with these things, rather than just a fan deciding to do it. Mm-hmm. And that was where the convention came from. We spent ages looking at venues in Edinburgh and Fife and Dundee and places like that, and none of them ticked enough boxes. And then my wife, who owns a wool shop in Pittenweem, she was at a yarn festival at the Jewers Centre in Perth, came home from that and said, you should go and have a look at that. It turns out one of my team, John Harper, has been going there for many, many, many years with his father to model rail events, and did not think of mentioning it. Thanks, John. But yeah, and it kind of went from there. I think the main reason we chose that, other than ticking all the boxes, was the experience when you walk into a house when you're looking to move and you can see yourself living there. Mm. I could immediately see the event being there. And they wanted us there. Hotels didn't. We weren't a wedding. We weren't a business event. We were something odd that wouldn't have everybody sitting down for a meal at a certain time. All that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how it's gone. I still don't know why I'm doing it, which is probably going back to the original question, but I am doing it because I enjoy doing it.
So 2 years ago, you take an even bigger step.
So yeah, basically your big desire to keep it in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so the Jewers Centre, during the pandemic, obviously we didn't host the event. I ran an online RPG convention because my mate Mark said, you've got all this free time now, Dave, why don't you do that? Okay, fine, I'll work out how Discord works and we'll do that. And that went really well. And we had people like Brendan and Sal from Goodman Games running games for us and stuff like that, which is really cool. But in 2019, after 2 years of being at the Jewers Centre, I was like, right, I need a plan for when we outgrow this, because it increased in size from an attendance perspective by 50% in 1 year. So it was kind of like, right, okay, we're going to outgrow this. But it was always going to be a choice to move. And that's when I started looking at options. And sadly, there are only 4 venues in Scotland that have more space than the Jewers Centre in Perth does. One of them is in Aberdeen, but that was never going to work logistically for a variety of reasons. 2 of them are in Edinburgh, and one of them is the SEC in Glasgow. So it was always going to be, well, Edinburgh or Glasgow then, right? But the decision to move was precipitated by the venue in Perth is council owned, council budgets are under a lot of strain, and it was at risk of closure. So our last year in Perth, I had a visit from the Deputy Provost, the Chief Executive of the body that was running the centre, and other people from the council to try and convince us to stay. What they didn't know is I'd signed a contract that Friday night. So it was kind of like, I mean, I didn't say we were going to stay, in all fairness, but it was impossible for us to stay.
So just in terms of the numbers, how many folks were in Perth, like, as 3 years ago? So my first Tabletop Scotland was that one.
Now I'm not going to look at my phone. I honestly can't remember, but if you think about the growth from the move from 2023 to 2024, i.e. Perth to the Royal Helen Centre, our attendance grew by 75% in that 1 year.
Because last year's was like 4,000?
Around about 4,000 unique, 3,800 uniques last year. So whatever that is, I can't do the mental arithmetic.
2,000,
but it was over 2,000.
Yeah.
I think it was around about 2,200. And it's probably my fault, as most of this is, but we're a design principle from the very start of space between things for accessibility reasons, but also just general comfort factor. So whilst we could have stayed in Perth and crammed more people into it, We weren't going to do that. That just wasn't in our interest or our attendees' interest or anybody's interest.
So now it's in the Highland Center. It's been now the second year.
Yes.
And now, what were the numbers this year?
Oh, he's asking me numbers.
That's it. I'm curious.
4,200 unique, I think, and 6,800 and something turnstile. So that's, well, our first year we had 1,000 unique and we had 1,500 turnstile. So, that's 4 times the size from an attendance level from year 1 to year whatever this is. And the space we have at the Royal Highland Centre is more than 3 times the space that we had at Perth.
And there's more space.
And there's more space. There is growth potential. And yes, the venue were speaking to me on the Thursday while we were doing setup about contract extensions and all that kind of stuff. And they want to start those conversations in October, which is fine because the contract will currently and will continue to have a break clause every year so that I'm able to say no.
When you're thinking about a venue for convention like this, I know you said space is a big issue, and obviously you're limited in terms of the numbers in terms of where you can go in Scotland just because of how big it's getting. I know you think quite carefully about the dynamics of as an exhibitor. I've gotten a few emails and a few things, like most recently your feedback that had come out talking about like how the intentionality with which you kind of think about that stuff. I'm curious about how you've looked at something like the Royal Highland Centre, which is most well known for having cows.
Yes.
And taking that and saying, we're going to make this into an intentional space for a convention.
I mean, it's mainly just sticking the boards to the cows. That was actually really interesting and fun to play it around.
Interestingly, there were cows in the Royal Highland Centre on the Tuesday of the week before the convention. There were miniature Highland cows there because Chappelle Rowan had asked for them to be
They
there.
got mixed up about a miniature convention.
No, we didn't see them. All we saw was the fences when we turned up on the Wednesday.
Miniature cows wargaming.
I mean, there's a game there.
There is a game.
But I think the space has to be conducive to what you put in it. And by that, I mean, so let's talk about the space between things first. Every single gaming row, column, whatever, has to have 2.5 meters between tables. So you put someone in a chair, they'll occupy between 50 and 70 centimeters, depending on the size of the individual. You can always get a wheelchair between the backs of chairs then, right? We've had that since day one because I wasn't not having that. Having little bits of space between exhibitors means they can utilize all of the space that they've paid me for, and then they can still get in and out of their stand. Again, that's just an accessibility consideration for people. People who have notified us that they're in wheelchairs, we will place them accordingly in the floor plan so that they can get in and out of their stand. The word that keeps coming up is care. We apply a level of care to the experience of people who come to the event. We don't always get it right, which is why we ask for feedback fundamentally. And I know a lot of people will say this, but we absolutely do read all of that feedback. There will always be constraints as to what we can do within the space we have. But one of the weaknesses of the building that last year, which we didn't fix this year, we worked around this year, is the lighting in that hall. And that disadvantaged the number of exhibitors last year. And that we didn't know would happen until you put something in it. So that was why we took the action we did. We changed the floor plan. We essentially pivoted at 90 degrees and compressed the sides a little bit to enable that better experience for everybody. And so far, the feedback's emulating it. So that's good.
In terms of like marshalling a group of volunteers, I mean, you don't do this full time. I mean,
No, this is definitely none of us do this full time. We do this entirely voluntarily. The only thing the convention pays for is our hotel that weekend.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. I think up until last year, or maybe the year before, UKGE was also all volunteer.
Yeah, I mean,
until relatively recently.
You asked Richard and Tony precisely when that happened, but when I think it was just before the pandemic, they had a decision to make on the amount of time they could still give up to this.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, they had to make certain decisions about the space to utilise in the NEC, which meant that they had to commercially make other decisions, which meant they had to go full-time. Yeah. I mean, they've essentially been full-time, just not paid for it.
Exactly.
There's a story that Richard keeps telling me about 1 year it paid for his gas bill or something like that. You know, it's things like that they did with it. But it is a thing that demands a lot of time, especially when you apply a level of care to it. You want to make sure that time is used appropriately. And the volunteers we have are They're amazing. This year was the first year we introduced what we've dubbed as orange shirts. Essentially classic Star Trek. We're yellow, the command. Red shirts are our volunteers, so they're the security guards who are disposable. And then blue are for events, so your science team and stuff like that.
How many red did we lose this year?
None. We've not lost
Got the
any
cows.
red. We've
got
had a
the
couple
cows.
of red that have been sent to hospital, but those were in the Perth days. None since.
Okay,
none since
good.
moving. So our
More delicate in Perth.
yeah, maybe.
It's the inhospitable environment. Like it's going to take them out.
It's clearly, yeah.
I mean, that was the ice rink being not an ice rink; it was concrete. So if you fall on concrete, it's going to hurt. But yeah, I mean, last year the yellow shirts were, including myself, were emotionally, mentally, and physically completely broken by the Sunday. And two of my team in particular weren't able to leave the areas that they were responsible for. And the challenge I kind of threw at all of them, including myself, was you need to be able to enjoy this. Yes, you need to host it, but you need to be able to enjoy it. So we need a way for you to step away from those areas and know that they're under control. So that's where the orange shirts largely came in. There were a few orange shirts that were essentially mates of mine that I was like, I'm going to give you things to do. I don't know what they're going to be until I need them done. And that was fine because I knew I could trust them with that responsibility. But the vast majority of the volunteers, and I include our blue shirts in that as well, our event people as well, are people that we know or we've come to know since starting the convention, which is really nice because they keep coming back. We've not upset them. They want to do this. Some of them followed me down to Expo this year because we took over running D&D at Expo as well.
Is there ever going to be a sort of too many cooks situation, do you think? Or is that a no, you're never going to get that amount of volunteers and people involved who will have enough authority to kind of change stuff up, to mess with what you have built?
I mean, I'm the planner for the event. More and more, the other yellow shirts are becoming more involved in that planning. Simon in particular, and Gemma to a degree as well, because she looks after the front of house stuff, catering and things like that. But the volunteers don't really engage until we need them. Some of the orange shirts have expressed an interest in being more directly involved. So I do see what you mean by that. I think ultimately, though, I have a veto on anything, right? Partly because I'm a control freak and therefore,
Sorry, someone organizing something completely is a control for. I don't.
You don't
I don't
relate
think
to that?
me or you
Sorry,
relate to that.
Putting the mirrors away.
Yeah, both of us suffer through. Yeah, slightly.
But it is that thing that we, particularly the people who are involved in hosting the event, we particularly focus on their feedback. I've been quoted before about feedback in the sense that 95% of it we've already thought of because we actually know what we're doing. We've been doing this long enough, but that 5% is pure gold. Now that 95%, there may be 20% of it that we'd love to be able to do, but we can't for either financial reasons, space reasons, or whatever. But there'll always be little nuggets that you go, you know what? We've not thought of that. Why don't we explore it?
I think you should have more space. And to be honest, it seems like the way to solve this problem is to get you drunk and let you build an entire new arena to have a whole bunch of conventions.
I mean, there are literally people who bring bottles of whiskey to conventions that I'm at on the basis that maybe we'll get Dave drunk and he'll do this. 2 bottles of whiskey were brought to me to Tabletop Scotland this year as an example.
So you talked earlier about how you were passionate in terms of games. You started a store. It kind of ruined your hobby.
It didn't work, yeah.
And it turned it into a product. Are you concerned about the same thing happening with it? Like, well, what protections are you taking to make sure you're having actually fun and engaging?
So there's 2 things here. One, it is work, right? I do think of it as work, but it will never be my employment. I've drawn that line. I never want this to be my job, ever. Because of that history, there's an element of, there is a fear factor to that of if I care too much about it and I rely on it as an income, then that's a bad thing for me as an individual, right? I don't want that. And it's an interesting thing because when I speak to, for want of a better phrase, my peers, people who run similar events to mine, they ask me, so what's your 5-year plan? And I'm like, I don't have one. I've got a 1-year rolling plan. And I've forgotten the original question there.
How do you make sure that you still have fun?
So I have fun by, and this is a bit of a cop-out phrase, I have fun by seeing other people enjoy my event, right? I don't play games at conventions. That's not just my convention. I don't play them at AirCon, at Dragon Meet, or UK Games Expo. I haven't really, probably since 2016, because I go to chat to people, socialize. I spend more time in the Hilton Bar at the Expo than I do any other part of Expo, right? Because that is a place where I'll see people, and it's the only time of year I'll see them, or have the time to sit down and have a blether with them, you know, and that's really important to me. So I think the only convention that I've ever really been to as a punter is Gen Con, because I can't replicate that in this country. I can learn things while I'm there, but I'm there as a consumer of the festival experience of the event. But as I say, I enjoy watching other people enjoy my event, even though it's not just me. But I do treat it like that. And that isn't just my attendees, that's my event hosts, that's my exhibitors. I want to make sure they're all having a kind of positive experience while they're at it.
That's awesome. I mean, that's the goal, I think, for anything that anyone builds and gets other people to join.
But it's a deliberate thing, right? It is this thing of when I decided to do this, and it wasn't just because I got drunk. I think this was in me anyway, right, in many respects. Having lost the shop, I hadn't lost the desire to do something within the hobby, if you follow me. So it's looking at it, it was just looking at it from a different perspective and going, right, how do I celebrate this hobby in a different way? Having attended lots of kind of conventions, including Gen Con UK back in the days when it was at Butlins and stuff like that, right? And seeing how, for want of a better phrase, how rubbish they were, and going, I mean, I manage projects for a living. This is just a project. That's all it is, right?
So is that directly from your job then? Or is this something that you would suggest to, hey, someone is thinking about how much they love the hobby, they have hundreds of games or whatever, they're constantly playing them, but they're like, oh, I would love to celebrate this in the space that I live. Is that something that you would suggest to someone else to go, hey, this is a great way to start something, even if it starts small? And what advice would you give to them if that is your answer? If your answer is no, never do this, I have no hair now, it's all wrong.
My answer is not never do this, right? I get asked a lot, although less recently, probably because the same people have stopped asking me, when are you going to do a spin-off event? When are you going to do this, that, and the other? And my answer is, it doesn't need to be me, right? Anyone can do this. But you have to think through all the reasons why you want to do it and all the requirements of a space. So how do people get there? Is the first question that you have to ask, right? If you live in a small village, like I do, where there's a bus service but no train service, you're kind of like, right, okay, well, people wouldn't choose to come there necessarily for this. It is a destination event, right? So you need to factor that in. There are people who have run smaller events in Inverness, which have started and then stopped because of reasons. And it's looking at, well, why did that happen? Did you not provision something in a certain way? So, I mean, I'm very open to people reaching out to me. I've helped people set up a convention in Bristol. I've helped people do things in Manchester because, you know, I'm happy to talk about this process. It's even one of the things before I did this, I think this was 2016 at Expo, Richard and Tony did a panel or workshop-y thing. Sorry, Richard and Tony who run UK Games Expo. And they were basically opening the door for people to pick their brains, which was very useful. I took lots of notes. And then the second visit we had to Perth, while the rest of the team were kind of rambling around the building to look at every square inch we could use, I had a 45-minute call with Richard and Tony where they basically asked me 1 million questions. And I had an answer for every single one of them, only one of which I made up on the spot. And that was very kind of confidence boosting.
Edifying, yeah.
Right. And they were like, okay, how can we help you? And I'm happy to do the same for others, right? I've given unsolicited advice to events before, which hasn't necessarily always gone down well. But there are events that could exist. There is no reason why we couldn't have multiple conventions in Scotland. And a convention can be a lot of different things. I also manage, and I did this as a planning tool originally, there's a Google sheet out there, which is a list of every single board game and RPG convention in the UK and Ireland, which I maintain it. And I did it as a planning tool to go, when is the right time of year for us to host this? And it's maintained roughly quarterly. And just little things like that, thinking about where you are in the schedule, what are you going up against geographically, little things, even if you're only a 100-person event, you're still an event. So you need to factor these things in. And I keep being asked by people who run like games clubs, but once every quarter they do a big event. Should that be on your calendar? I'm like, no, it's not a convention. But then I get asked, how do you define what a convention is? I don't know the answer to that. It's not a games club meetup, is essentially where my head is. But it could be.
I think we need to define it further. We need to make sure that every convention
Cows
has,
involved.
Are cows involved? Do they have canapes?
They could
Are they
be.
prepared for war games?
It's an interesting thing to define something by the amount of people that are there, because I don't think that really happens. I always think of it as Scotland's trading card game show in the SEC, which is a trading card game retail space.
Yes.
I again find that really difficult to think of.
And it's
at the
also a
convention.
sports card event as
Right,
well.
it's sports cards, it's baseball cards. There's a whole bunch of cards that are being bought and sold. At no part of that is there a card game playing space or any tournament going on or people meeting up or anything else like that. It is literally just for trading card game enthusiasts to buy and sell cards to each other. I personally don't think that's a convention, but it's also... I could see when someone says, no, it's got loads of people, they are focused on one hobby, they call it a convention, I would be like, well, that's fair enough.
The
That's acceptable.
parallel for me would be Carronade, which is a war game show in Falkirk. And Carronade is, for want of a better phrase, a trade event and club promotion event, right? Clubs run tables to demonstrate games, to so on. And there are traders there who are selling predominantly miniatures because it's a war game show. And then you've got things like Comic-Cons. Now, the reason I'm putting those two things together is the transient experience of appearing at those events is you're there for a few hours and then you leave. At a gaming convention, you're there from the door opening to the door closing.
Oh, me and you are.
No, there are other people as well who are there. I remember last year, the team said, right, okay, so your door's shut at 11. When do you think you'll get everybody out by? And I was like, 10 past. They were like, no, you won't. And I was like, no, we'll do that. It's not a problem. I think it was about 11:15. John Harper and I in particular, we went to the back of the hall and we just started walking forwards. We don't wear wristwatches. We just started tapping our wrists. And people were like, oh, yeah, right, okay, we need to start packing up. And it's gentle enforcement in a way, right? We're not chucking people out. We're just reminding them that the time is ticking here.
You also attend quite a few of these events. Are there aspects of other events, whether in the UK or further afield, that are like kind of on your wish list, but they might be hard to actually bring into fold into Tabletop Scotland? But are there any aspects that you're like, oh, they do like that's really awesome?
I mean, if space wasn't a limitation,
let's just blue sky.
Because my first answer would be more RPGs, please, because we don't have enough space for RPGs, and we get that feedback every year. We know. I think the main thing is so when I go to Gen Con, other than buying stuff, the vast majority of my time is in talks. I'm either listening to designers about how to write for role-playing games or game design or whatever like that. We dabble with that at best. We would like to do a lot more with that. And then you mix in kind of actual play style things, which we had a few of this year. We would like to do more with that as well. I think we want to echo the demand of our attendee. But personally, I would like more talks. And I don't just mean someone standing up there and talking at an audience. Panels of people who represent this hobby and the community around the hobby would be just great. But there is a limit to what we can do currently with that. And the main frustration, for one better phrase, I have with it is people don't offer to do these things. We have to go and get them. And there's an individual within the industry in the UK who we're good friends, but he likes to criticise me publicly and privately that I don't do enough for the Scottish industry.
I'm so sorry. I got to say it now publicly.
You.
I'm so. Oh, it's not me. Oh, okay, it's another one.
No,
Oh, okay.
there's another one. You don't criticise me publicly, I don't think.
You haven't read his Tumblr.
my open blog to
right.
the world. Yeah.
Okay, I'll need to find you now. But it is this thing of, I don't know what you mean by that. Tell me what it is you want me to do, which is one of the reasons why we look at all the feedback, right? Because there will be things we're not doing that people want. I mean, every year people ask us about doing LARPs, and it's not a part of the hobby I've ever experienced. And it's also a part of the hobby that requires more space than we can give it. It's the same with mega games, which is it's kind of weird saying that given the move to a space 3 times the size, right? But giving it dedicated space is actually really hard to do. And the only way we could do that is by expansion.
So getting you drunk and getting you to build a big...
No, that's how I start doing things.
Okay, it's not a good way to finish it.
Yeah, it's probably a way of thinking of it. Yeah.
What, just kind of switching gears, what have you been playing recently? Like,
So the sad fact is I haven't played any role-playing games this year because I wear 2 hats. I run Tabletop Scotland in my spare time, 3 hats. I have a day job as well. Don't forget about that. And the other thing is the convention was appointed premier organiser for D&D last year because we run the most D&D of any convention in the UK, which means we get given a region of Forgotten Realms to write content for, and we get support from WotC to do things at events, which is why I am now responsible for D&D at UK Games Expo. So that, because UK Games Expo was at the end of May, we had to get all the writing done, all the play testing done. So my first half of this year was dominated by that, which is great because it's fantastic stuff. But it does mean I have less time to enjoy my hobby. I've played board games, but not as frequently as I would like. As the games club I run in Anstruther, my co-organiser Alan would attest to that he's not actually seen me since April. But yeah, so yeah, it's something I want to fix, but I don't quite know how.
So having been within gaming since you were very, very young and having the game shop, being kind of like a finger in all of the separate parts of the industry, what have you seen as the kind of biggest change within that timescale?
Oh dear God.
I know, big questions.
The weird experience of the pandemic resulting in a lot of people returning to the hobby and experiencing the hobby for the first time. I don't just mean role-playing games by playing them online. I mean board games in general. The public perception of this hobby has changed so much, particularly since 2014 with 5e, but in general, I think it's become more and more visible to the point that people who work for me in my day job, they play board games. Not because I've forced them to.
I mean, it does help though.
It does help,
yeah,
because then I can get them to help me when I run board game events at work for charity. But yeah, I think it is just that weird explosion, but fantastic explosion of interest over the last 10 or so years. And, the demographic of the hobby has changed significantly, which is amazing. And I don't just mean from a gender perspective, the age demographic of the hobby has changed significantly as well. And that, is an anecdotal piece of data we track. We don't ask people for that information, but we do some sort of kind of guesstimate of how it feels. And the very fact that, newspapers are now contacting me rather than me having to go and get them to listen to me about the convention.
About the convention, not just the horrible other things that you've been doing.
Well, I mean, I just don't reply to those.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, no, keep that anonymity.
Think of the gals.
Yeah. Think of the cats.
It's a different email address.
Okay, good. Yeah. Dave the serial killer at gmail.com. No. Well, that's really amazing to hear. I love Tabletop Scotland. It's always been a joy to kind of go and be part of something that feels so kind of open and social within the Scottish gaming kind of scene. it's great to have something that does that and promotes that. And I think that's a big feel that I always get whenever I go there, is it's not just a convention to go and meet your friends for. It's a convention that is trying to push the most positive parts of the hobby and add more charity stuff, add more players, add more accessibility for more people to come and play, which is fantastic. Next year, Tabletop Scotland will hopefully be happening roughly the same time.
Yeah, 4th to 6th of September, exactly the same amount of space. We might tweak how that's laid out. But yeah, that's it. And then beyond that, well, that depends on our contract renegotiation.
We'll have to see. If people want to find out more about Tabletop Scotland,
tabletopscotland.co.uk and Tabletop Scot on pretty much every social media. Probably most active is Blue Sky, because I'm most active in Blue Sky. Well, Facebook as well. But
got you. And to throw you under the bus, seeing as you did say that people come and talk to you about these things.
They do.
If you were open to people coming and talking to you about things or sending you messages, where would be the best place for them to send those messages?
So David at tabletopscotland.co.uk is the email address, or a second chapter at gmail.com.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Dave, for coming to join us.
No problem.
Always a pleasure to chat to you. And roll on next Tabletop Scotland.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I have been Dougal.
And I am Gelb.
And this has been recorded and edited by Ryan Scott. If you liked this, or didn't...
Even if you didn't,
please let us know in the comments, or via email or Pigeon, if you got Pigeon.
follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like us, drop us a line. And if you don't, do this really, really cool thing where you press follow or like. It actually works against us. So we'll still get the message.
Thank you very much for coming and listening with us, and we'll hear you next time.